Have you ever stopped to think about why we feel such a heavy weight when we open the closet of someone who has passed away? Why does that folded shirt, that hanging dress, seem to hold not just the fabric, but the very presence of the departed? Some say it's not just memories that linger there. According to Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, keeping a loved one's clothes after death can carry consequences that go far beyond mere longing. When I first heard this warning, I confess it struck me as strange. After all, keeping a piece of clothing might seem like a gesture of love, a way to keep a memory alive. But Cayce was direct. That which intimately belonged to someone's body, clothes, shoes, personal items, remains impregnated with that person's energy, pains, and even conflicts. And if this energy doesn't find a destination, it stays there, silently, influencing those who remain. And here arises the question you are probably already asking yourself. Can keeping the clothes of the departed somehow tie us to their suffering? Cayce said yes. For him, life does not end with physical death. The spirit continues its journey, but material attachments can create invisible chains. What was just a hanging coat can become a link between the world of the living and the still restless memory of the departed. Imagine someone who passed away after years of pain, resentment, or difficulties. Would the energy of these experiences not remain impregnated in the objects closest to their body? Cayce warned that the environment where the person lived, and especially what was in constant contact with them, carries traces of their vibration. Keeping these clothes for long periods would be like leaving the door ajar for these impressions to continue circulating within the home, silently affecting the balance of those who stayed. Perhaps you are now recalling your own experience. Who hasn't opened a drawer belonging to a deceased mother, father, or partner, felt that tightness in their chest, and at the same time a strange sense of presence? It is at this delicate point that Cayce asks for our attention. It is not about disrespecting memory or rejecting longing. On the contrary, it is about recognizing that love does not need to be tied to pieces of cloth. The true connection does not unravel when we hand those clothes over to other destinations. But before proceeding, allow me to propose a pact with you. Throughout this video, we will explore together what Cayce revealed about this topic. I will share stories, reflections, and explanations that might change the way you look at the closet of the departed. And I promise, in the end, the question that might be echoing in your mind, what should I do with these clothes? Will have a clear, serene, and liberating answer. Curious how something seemingly simple can hide such depth, isn't it? Most of us keep clothes out of emotional attachment. But Cayce said that this gesture, however innocent it may seem, can keep the spirit restless, preventing it from fully detaching from matter. He affirmed that every object carries an etheric impression, like an invisible mark left by human contact. The more intimate the object, the stronger the impression. That's why clothes are so delicate. They were glued to the body, absorbed sweat, heat, emotions. Now think with me. If the person was joyful, expansive, full of positive energy, part of that vibration can remain there. But what if they also carried deep sorrows, unresolved pains, fears that were never spoken aloud? These burdens can remain equally trapped in the fabric. Keeping clothes, then, is not just keeping memories. It is keeping inside the house a kind of energetic mirror of the life that ended. You might be asking yourself, but does this mean I shouldn't keep anything from the person I loved? This is a common doubt. Cayce did not preach cold detachment or indifference. He spoke of discernment. The problem is not in preserving a symbolic object, like a photo, a letter, or a special piece of jewelry. The warning is mainly for clothes and very intimate belongings, precisely because they are charged with vital energy. It's different to keep a wedding ring and to keep an entire closet of clothes. An affectionate memory doesn't entrap. Excessive attachment does. Here's a moment for us to reflect together. How many families go years without touching the drawers of the departed? Time passes, but the room remains untouched, as if at any moment the door would open and the person would return. But this wait never ends. And those who remain, without realizing it, live trapped in this environment, frozen in time. Cayce would say that it's not just emotions that are retained, but also energies that could be released, so that everyone can move on in peace, the living and the disembodied. Perhaps now you are recalling a similar story. Maybe that of your grandmother, who kept her husband's room exactly as he left it for decades, or of a friend who wouldn't let anyone touch their deceased child's clothes. These gestures are human, understandable. They are attempts to not completely lose contact. But if we truly wish to honor the departed, shouldn't we also free what remained trapped here? Edgar Cayce suggested that the best way to deal with these belongings was to find a dignified destination for them, donate them to those in need, transform them into something useful, or even, in some cases, perform a simple ceremony of release as if to say, "With love, we let you go, and we also let these objects find new life." This attitude is not abandonment, but a gesture of mature love, which recognizes that the soul of the loved one is not in a piece of fabric, but on a much higher plane. If you find it difficult to imagine yourself getting rid of these clothes, that's normal. It's not easy to face absence. Often the closet becomes a kind of sanctuary of memory. But ask yourself, does keeping that coat hanging, that dress folded, truly preserve the love you shared? Or does it merely prolong a pain that could transform into a serene memory? Cayce would say the latter is more common. And here we reach a crucial point. When we don't release these objects, we are not just keeping longing alive. We are also unconsciously hindering our own healing process. It's as if every time we open the drawer, we reinforce the idea that we haven't fully accepted the departure. And this resistance is not good for those who remain, nor for those who have already departed. The most impressive thing is that accounts from families who followed Cayce's advice show a noticeable change. Many say that after donating or getting rid of the clothes, they felt an unexpected lightness within the house. As if the environment breathed again, as if the presence of the loved one had transformed into something softer, less painful. It's almost like opening a window after a long time closed. The same house, but the air is different. Perhaps you are feeling a mixture of curiosity and resistance right now. Part of you understands the meaning of this warning, but another part, probably, still clings to the idea that getting rid of clothes is like erasing the memory of the departed. Therefore, let's delve deeper into Cayce's vision. Let's understand why clothes carry this energetic weight, and how to deal with it without guilt, without fear, and without the feeling of betraying the memory of those we love. And here I leave a question for you to ponder. If the essence of love is not in the fabric, but in the spirit, why do we insist on keeping it in closets? To fully understand Cayce's warning, we need to revisit something we often prefer not to confront: the invisible weight that objects carry. Have you ever noticed how certain places or things seem to speak to us even in silence? A chair where someone always sat, a wristwatch worn by daily use, or a piece of clothing that still carries the person's characteristic scent. All of this, in a way, preserves an impression. For Cayce, it wasn't just imagination. He believed that there is a real energetic field imbued in these objects. But why would clothes be so special in this process? The answer lies in intimate contact. Clothes directly touch the skin. They absorb sweat, emotions, states of mind. Think about how you feel when you wear an outfit from an important moment, a wedding, a farewell, a personal victory. That item, in some way, seems to hold more than fabric and stitching. It carries condensed memories. Now imagine an entire closet of clothes from someone who has passed away. How many experiences, joys, and pains are not there, invisible, waiting to be released? According to Cayce, by keeping these clothes for too long, we not only retain memories, but create a kind of anchor point for the spirit. As if we were unconsciously saying, "I still need you here, I still can't let you go." And this call, however silent, can hinder the soul's natural process of detachment. It's as if the departed person hears the echo of our attachment and hesitates to fully move on. That sounds heavy, I know, because no one keeps clothes with the intention of imprisoning the spirit of those they love. We do it out of love, out of longing, out of a need to feel their presence in some way. But true love doesn't need chains. Genuine love liberates, allowing the other's journey to continue. And by liberating, we also liberate ourselves. The clothes closet may seem like a refuge, but in many cases it becomes a silent prison, for both the living and the deceased. You might be recalling moments when you held a piece of clothing and cried, as if the person were back. This isn't weakness, it's human. But Cayce invites us to reflect. Does this crying not prolong because we insist on feeding the illusion of physical presence? And are we not, without realizing it, delaying the transformation of longing into something lighter, into a loving memory that strengthens us instead of paralyzing us? There is something very curious in the accounts that accompany Cayce's work. He said that some people fell ill or lived enveloped in deep sadness precisely because they remained attached to objects of the deceased. He didn't speak of a punishment or a curse, but of a natural consequence of stagnant energy. It's like water that doesn't flow. If it stays still, it creates an environment conducive to imbalances. In the same way, clothes kept for long years can crystallize pains and keep alive a weight that should have already been transformed. Now it's important not to fall to extremes. It's not about throwing everything away the day after death as if it were wrong to feel. Cayce spoke of a process. Grief needs time, and part of that time may indeed involve proximity to some belongings. What he warned us about is not to perpetuate this attachment indefinitely. The risk lies in letting months turn into years, and years into decades, keeping that space untouched as if life had stopped there. And there's a detail that deserves attention. Often it's not just the direct person who suffers from this. Children, grandchildren, close relatives can feel the emotional burden of that environment. Have you heard of houses where a heavy atmosphere lingers, as if sadness were almost palpable? Cayce explained that this has a lot to do with objects impregnated with unreleased energy, especially clothes. They function as small reservoirs of this charge. And here arises a delicate question. If we shouldn't keep these clothes for too long, what should we do with them? Cayce's answer was simple, but it required courage. Donate them. Allow what was used in life to find a new purpose, to help other people. By doing this, we break the cycle of attachment. We transform a burden into a blessing. It's as if we were saying, the love we lived is not here. Therefore, I hand over what is material so that it may transform into life for others. But of course, the human heart doesn't always accept this path easily. The resistance comes strong. What if I never feel their presence again? What if I regret it? Cayce would say that these thoughts are normal, but they stem from the fear of losing everything. Yet love is not lost. The true bond does not depend on objects. It is etched in the spirit, in memory, in the impact that person left on you. It is something that not even death erases. Can you perceive the contrast? Fabric wears out, tears disappears, but the essence remains. Keeping clothes is trusting the cloth more than the eternal bond. Donating clothes is trusting that the bond goes beyond the cloth. This is the leap Cayce proposes to us. There's another important point. Often by keeping these clothes, we not only hold on to our memory, but also send a message to ourselves. I am not ready to move on. And this inner message traps us. It's like carrying a suitcase full of heavy memories. You walk, but each step is slower, more tired. Now imagine letting go of that suitcase. Imagine giving up that weight. The path remains the same, but suddenly walking feels lighter. And here I want to pause to suggest something simple. Look at the closet of the departed loved one, if it still exists, and ask yourself silently, am I keeping love or am I keeping pain? This question is powerful, because in many cases, we don't keep what was beautiful, but rather what prevents us from accepting the absence. If the answer is pain, perhaps it's time to transform. But don't think Cayce suggested a cold process. He spoke of simple rituals that could give meaning to this act of donation or disposal. Lighting a candle, saying a prayer, talking aloud to the loved one, explaining the gesture. This small ritual helps the heart understand that love is not being rejected, but honored. By handing over the clothes, you are not erasing the person, but making space for them to live in a different way within you. So far, we've covered the central idea of the warning. Don't keep clothes indefinitely. But perhaps you're still wondering, what if I keep just one item, something very symbolic like a special memento? This is a legitimate question, and Cayce did not condemn preserving something small, as long as it wasn't a substitute for grieving. Keeping a tie, a dress, a blanket can be healthy if it's a symbol and not a prison. The difference lies in the weight you assign to that object. Is it a serene memory or a bond that prevents you from moving on? So far, we have discussed the risk of keeping clothes and intimate objects, as Cayce warned, but there is an even deeper aspect to this issue, what these belongings truly represent to those who remain. Because deep down, we are not just dealing with pieces of fabric, but with symbols. And symbols often have a power that surpasses that of the object itself. When someone dies, the emptiness left behind seems impossible to fill. It's as if life has lost an essential pillar. At that moment, any trace of physical presence becomes valuable. The coat still with its familiar scent, the shoes that bear the mark of their stride, the shirt that seems to carry the shape of their body. All of this functions as a bridge between what was and what no longer is. And here lies the dilemma. Do we need these bridges to keep alive the connection with the departed? Cayce would say no. He asserted that the true connection is not in objects, but in the spirit. When we insist on maintaining these material bridges, we are actually clinging to what no longer exists. It's as if we remain on the riverbank looking at the current without the courage to cross. Objects function as emotional anchors. Instead of helping us remember fondly, they can trap us in a cycle of pain and longing. And the curious thing is that we often don't even realize it. We think we are just honoring the memory, but deep down we are avoiding confrontation with absence. Keeping clothes can be unconsciously a way of denying reality. And here arises a delicate question. By preserving these objects, are we not telling ourselves that we still haven't accepted death? This point is essential, because accepting death doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean abandoning. It means recognizing that life has changed form, that the bond continues, but no longer through the body or material things. It means trusting that the essence of the one we love is free and not trapped inside a closet. There are accounts of families who experienced curious situations when keeping clothes for a long time. Some say they repeatedly dreamed of the loved one as if they were trying to say something. Others report that the closed room became heavy, uncomfortable, difficult to enter. For Cayce, these signs were not coincidences. He said that material attachment truly creates a kind of field of resistance, both for the departed and for those who remained. Now perhaps you are thinking, but I'm afraid to donate, afraid that the memory will disappear with the objects. This is a common feeling. However, the truth is exactly the opposite. By releasing the material, the memory becomes purer, lighter, less painful, because it ceases to depend on something external and begins to live within you. It's like exchanging a yellowed photograph for a living memory that never fades. Cayce suggested something very practical for dealing with this process, transforming the act of donating or discarding into a conscious gesture of love. He recommended that it be done with prayer, with words spoken aloud, as one would converse with the spirit of the loved one. Something like, "These clothes served your body and your life, but now I give them away so that they may serve others. What unites us is not here. It is in the love that remains." This simple gesture completely changes the meaning of the action. It ceases to be loss and becomes a celebration. And see how powerful this can be. When we give something from our loved one to help another person, we create a chain of continuity. What seemed like an end transforms into a new beginning. The clothes that were once still, lifeless, now warm someone else, become useful again. And this cycle of renewal brings a type of peace that keeping them could never bring. Do you see the practical wisdom in Cayce's advice? He spoke not only in spiritual terms, but also psychologically. Because by letting go of objects, we force ourselves to work on detachment, to face reality, to accept absence. It's a difficult but liberating exercise. It's like opening the window of a room that has been closed for years. The air comes in, the light comes in, and suddenly we realize that this was what was missing to breathe better. Now, of course, each person has their own time. There is no defined deadline for releasing clothes. For some, it might be after a few months. For others, it might take more than a year. The important thing is not to let yourself be trapped by the idea that it will never be possible, because that never is precisely the trap Cayce warns us to avoid. The more we postpone, the harder it becomes. Attachment grows, the closet becomes an untouchable altar, and life begins to revolve around absence instead of continuing with transformed presence. This also brings in a reflection on legacy. What do you think your loved one would want to be done with their clothes? Would he or she want you to remain stuck in the past, unable to move on? Or would they prefer to see you transforming this gesture into something useful, allowing others to benefit? Often the answer is already within us, and it is a simple answer. True love always desires the freedom of the other. Allow me to tell you a story that illustrates this. A woman reported that after losing her husband, she kept his wardrobe untouched for 3 years. Every day she would open the doors, touch his shirts, smell them. But she also cried, always, unable to recover. One day, she remembered something he always said: "If I go before you, I want my things to help someone who needs them more." With great effort, she gathered the clothes and donated them to an institution. In the following weeks, she described a feeling of lightness she hadn't felt in years. Her dreams of her husband changed. Instead of seeing him sick and tired, she began to dream of him smiling, in peace. This transformation for Cayce was no coincidence. It was precisely the result of liberation. And here we arrive at a central idea. Keeping clothes can be a way of keeping suffering alive. Donating clothes can be a way of keeping love alive. It's a shift in perspective. It's not letting go of the bond, but transforming pain into something that generates life. This is the key. But you might be asking, what if I'm not ready? That's a legitimate doubt. No one is saying the process has to be abrupt. It can be gradual. You can start by separating a few pieces less loaded with memories, donating little by little. This initial movement already creates a change. It's like taking the first step on a journey. In time, you will realize that it is possible to continue, that memory is not lost, that pain softens. Now let's delve even deeper into this idea, entering into a question that Cayce considered crucial: how to transform grief into legacy. Because, in the end, what truly matters is not what we keep in the closet, but what we carry within us. And I leave a question to echo in your mind. Do you wish to keep only clothes, or do you wish to keep peace of heart? We have reached the final point of our journey, and perhaps you are already feeling that something within you has shifted. So far, we have spoken of the invisible weight of clothes, the attachment that binds, Cayce's warning about stagnant energies. But now it is time to look at what comes after liberation. Because it is not just about getting rid of objects, it is about giving new meaning to the memory of the departed. Cayce insisted that life continues. Death is not an absolute end, but a transition. And if so, the greatest gift we can offer to those we love is to help them move on in peace without material ties. The same applies to us, to move on in peace, without chains that bind us to the past. Keeping clothes is, in a way, insisting on reliving the moment of loss. Donating or transforming clothes is choosing to relive love, but at another, lighter, more serene frequency. And here is an important point. Every piece you release can become a symbol of continuity. Imagine a coat warming an elderly person in winter. Imagine a dress giving dignity to a woman in a vulnerable situation. Imagine a shirt worn by a young person seeking employment. Do you perceive the beauty of this? What was once just a memory becomes life in motion. What was stagnant returns to serve. It's as if love finds a new way to act in the world. This is the true legacy. It is not keeping what was in the back of a closet. It is allowing what was to become a blessing for others. Cayce said that the spirit rejoices when it realizes that its passage on earth continues to bear fruit. And perhaps that is why so many people report lighter dreams and more serene experiences after donating the clothes of the deceased. It's as if the loved one themselves were saying, "Thank you, now I can move on and so can you." But it must be recognized, not everyone is ready for this step immediately. Grief is a unique process, and each heart has its own time. Therefore, do not blame yourself if you still find it difficult. What matters is to be aware that at some point, liberation will be necessary. Keeping clothes indefinitely does not honor memory. It only prolongs pain. And when you are ready, this gesture will become an act of courage and love. Allow me to share one more simple image. Think of a tree in autumn. Its leaves fall one by one. The tree does not hold them, does not try to keep them green beyond their time. It lets them go because it knows that life continues, that new leaves will come. So it is with the clothes of our loved ones. They are like leaves that have fulfilled their function. Keeping them indefinitely does not make the tree flourish, but letting them fall makes space for renewal. And here arises a practical lesson: how to transform the act of release into something that brings peace. Cayce recommended simple rituals, as we have already mentioned. You can gather the family, choose some meaningful clothes, talk aloud about the memories associated with them, laugh, cry, remember together, and then, with serenity, decide the fate of those items. This moment of sharing strengthens bonds and gives meaning to farewell. What could be seen as loss transforms into a celebration of life lived. Some families choose to create projects in memory of the loved one. For example, donating clothes to an institution they admired, or even organizing a charitable campaign in their name. This gesture continues the legacy. It shows that the presence of that person did not end, it just changed form. Instead of being inside a closet, it spreads throughout the world in acts of kindness. But be aware, it's not just about external action. The transformation also needs to happen within us. Donating clothes is a visible step, but the real work is in the heart. It is learning to relate to memory in a new way. Instead of seeking presence in the fabric, seek it in what was lived, in the teachings, in the marks left in your own life. Because in the end, this is the only inheritance that is never lost. Cayce spoke much about the importance of vibrating in tune with love, not with fear. When we keep clothes out of attachment, we often do so moved by the fear of forgetting. But fear binds, love liberates, and true love does not fear forgetting because it is indestructible. It manifests in gestures, in the way we continue living, in the stories we tell. Now think, how would you like to be remembered when your time comes? Would you want your clothes to be kept for decades as if your presence were trapped in them? Or would you prefer them to be used to warm, help, bring dignity to other lives? The answer to this question usually reveals what we also need to do for those who have already departed. As we reach the end of this reflection, I want to tell you something that is perhaps Cayce's greatest lesson on this topic. It is not wrong to feel longing. It is not wrong to cry over a piece of clothing. The mistake is in believing that it is there, in the fabric, that the person you love resides. Because they are not. They are beyond, in a place where clothes are not needed. They are present in you, in the memories you hold, in the gestures you reproduce, in the love you continue to feel. Therefore, Cayce's warning is not a harsh command, but a compassionate invitation. He asks us not to imprison ourselves to the material, because the spiritual is much greater. He invites us to let life continue to flow, so that death is not a burden, but a passage. And perhaps upon hearing all this, you are feeling a mixture of pain and hope. This is natural, because talking about death is always difficult, but it can also be liberating. The truth is that keeping clothes can prolong suffering, but releasing clothes can make space for peace. And deep down, isn't that what we all desire, both for ourselves and for those who have passed? So, if today you have before you a closet full of clothes that you haven't been able to touch yet, don't rush, but also don't postpone indefinitely. When you feel the moment has come, make it a ritual of love. With each piece you release, remember, what truly matters cannot be given away, because it is already within you. And if this video touched something in you, if it brought clarity or comfort, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This way, this message can reach more people who may be caught in the same dilemma. Together, we can transform pain into understanding and attachment into legacy, because in the end it's not about clothes, it's about love, and love that indeed is never lost.